Teddy Talks With features Mario C. Bauer in conversation with the stars of the F&B industry. Join Mario and his guests as they explore what motivation, success, and most importantly, love for food mean. Because in life, only two things matter: love and food. Learn more on www.teddytalkswith.com.
Welcome and hello at Teddy Talks. This interview with my friend and mentor Henry McGovern is a very special one. Henry is the founder of AmRest, one of the most successful and biggest restaurant companies in Europe. When we did this interview back then in Spain, Henry was still acting CEO. In the meantime, he stepped back and sold his shares. Nevertheless, you will enjoy amazing insights and thoughts from one of the most successful entrepreneurs in our industry. So let's enjoy together. And don't forget, the teddy bear is everywhere. Welcome. So the next 40 minutes, we talk about a few topics with Henry. We talk about fun, people, because I know that you like to talk about people. We talk about growth. We talk about dark and digital, and we talk obviously about the Spanish market because since a couple of weeks you're now a Spanish company.
Yes.
And we want to learn also a little bit about you privately. But when we looked at the video, I was lucky to be at your convention at Lua, and Henry celebrated with 1,700 AmRestees the 25th birthday. And what was a normal party, it was a crazy party, like you always do. But what does this birthday mean for you, this 25 years AmRest, for you personally? What does it mean?
Well, first of all, I'm sorry I'm speaking English instead of Spanish, but hopefully you'll understand me throughout. Look, my story is a funny one. I came to Poland in 1993. A name like Henry McGovern is not very Polish, right? And I didn't expect to be in the restaurant business. I bought a building and I renovated the building, and everybody else in the world was like, Wrocław, Poland, where the hell is that? And no, I do not want to open a restaurant in your building. So I ended up getting the franchise for a Pizza Hut and opened our first restaurant. So for me, I guess it's an unlikely story. It's a story of just an entrepreneurial journey that's been great fun. I thought I would stay in Europe 1 or 2 years and see what the transition of Eastern Europe was after the fall of the wall. That's why I came. It was sort of the obvious, most interesting thing in the world at the time when the wall came down. And it's been fascinating. I've loved it. So my life has had the joy of being interesting. And always AmRest is providing another new part to the story because we keep growing and changing so much every year. And so it's been very fulfilling.
You did a speech at the convention saying what you called the Can and Will speech, and you said it was a long shot for you.
Yes.
Out of the US to Poland. How much, looking back, was luck and how much was hard work? Can you feel how much was luck and how much was hard work?
There's lots of sayings about luck, right? The harder I work, the luckier I get, and things like that. Mario has mentioned a couple times now, we just had this 1,600 of our restaurant managers we did it in Barcelona, we did it in Portaventura. So those of you know, it's a fun environment, and that's the way we look at the culture. We built AmRest from the beginning as a people business. It's very important to understand our company to try and reflect back on what the business 25 years ago was. When I went to Poland, there were literally no restaurants. I went to a city named Wrocław. It's about 700,000 people. There were 3 restaurants in the entire city. Communism didn't build restaurants, right? So we had to be a people company from the beginning because it wasn't like you could just go hire people with restaurant experience. We had to develop everybody from scratch. I had no restaurant experience myself. So it was just a lot of passion and drive and spirit of people coming together, trying to create something. It wasn't people with experience or professionalism or anything like that. It was just these people who felt like we could make something, and that's where Wszystko jest możliwe comes from, which todo es posible, I guess, is the Spanish translation. But so I don't know if it was luck or hard work, but it was a hell of a lot of spirit, and it was and positive energy. And then as we developed, we became more of a training company than a restaurant company. So I would say early on, we made decisions. We made a decision to have core values very early in the company. In our second year, we really defined the type of people we wanted. We defined HR practices that we still do, that I'm amazed that the industry doesn't do. The way we structure our training around the different categories, the review boards that we do are very different than most of the industry does. So I think it was by the fact that we had to build a different kind of business because we went to a place with no depth of experience or capability, something that was different in the industry. And then we've grown faster than the majority of the people in the industry sort of every year, forever. So we had to develop HR practices that were a bit different. So I don't know if it was luck, but I would say it was being different.
What I can definitely confirm is the people focus. I know a lot of companies and everybody talking about people first, but this company really lives it, and the senior team sticks next to you forever, and it's very difficult to steal people out of the structure because there's the vision, and you said something in the convention about it. It's a bring fun to life, and you said something about that when it was created, people didn't take it serious because it should be a serious vision behind, but you made the fun part of it. Can you share that?
Well, in Poland, especially again back then, being a serious company was important for hiring employees. Like, you have to be important, you have to be serious. And I was like, come on, we're in the restaurant business. What we should be about is fun. We should be about making people's lives a little bit better. They come into our restaurant every day because they want an hour or 30 minutes or whatever it is to be a little bit better. So why are we trying to be too serious? And also back then, under the communist structure, it was things like the president of the company, me, everybody in the beginning was like, Mr. President. I was like, good God, I'm not Mr. President. I was 25 years old. Like, call me Henry. And so everything about the company was just, let's just enjoy what we're doing. I'm a believer that you only get, one chance on this earth, and why waste it not enjoying ourselves? So I think that culture comes through in the business of the reason people go to restaurants is to have a better life. Working in a restaurant is difficult. I mean, I don't know how many people in this room worked in a restaurant, but it's difficult. And so if we don't figure out some ways to put some joy into it, some fun into it, it's just not as good as it could be.
And you also call yourself Chief Emotional Officer, so you're not executing. You give
No.
the emotion, the passion.
You wouldn't want me executing.
You lead 40,000 people, 50,000 people. A lot of them directly. You mentor them. You really very close to them, and you saw that on the convention. That besides being the leader of the company, you have a very close relation to people, and you help a lot of people. Who shaped you? Who mentoring you still, or who was important for you growing into who you are now?
Yeah. First, I probably have to thank my father. He was an entrepreneur, so he probably gave me the courage to be an entrepreneur. But in terms of business-wise, I was very lucky. When I bought this first building, I had a connection to the CEO of PepsiCo. And he had a fond connection with Russia and the old USSR because he had taken Pepsi into Russia in the 1960s. So when he heard that PepsiCo didn't want to rent the building from me, but there was some kid who wanted to open a PepsiCo restaurant in Poland, he supported it. So and he invited me over for dinner, and we became friends. And then he ended up owning 25% of the company and loaning me the $1 million I needed to get the company started. So he was hugely supportive and stayed in the company for 15 years and was my mentor. Great man, Don Kendall, just a phenomenal man. He walked into a room and everybody felt better.
Great.
It was great.
We come to the second topic, what is about growth. I remember last year we met at Wrocławia opening, and I was so proud, and I tried to impress you, and it was like this time of the year, six weeks in to go, and I said, Henry, we still open 6 restaurants. Can you imagine that? And you called your chief developing director, Jerzy, and said, how many we open now in the next couple of weeks? And you said 60, because you ended up with a crazy 207 back last year, and I think 300 this year,
right,
and over 400 or 400 the target. Is opening restaurants, physical restaurants, really the answer to become the restaurant company? Or is this opening and putting physical heavy capex, 1-2 million into that? How many can you open? Can you open 1,000 or 600? How you want to keep on growing?
right.
This podcast is brought to you by the Curtis Brothers, creators of artisanal organic ketchup. Guaranteed to tickle the taste buds of foodies, entrepreneurs and teddy bears around the world. Learn more on www.curtisbrothers.com.
This is probably the hottest topic we're all dealing with. I don't know how many people in this room are in the restaurant business, but this is the hottest issue, is what's the shift towards delivery? What's the shift from the Glovos and the Uber Eats, the Just Eats of the world? And what does it mean for building restaurants? We're believers, first of all, that brands will continue to take market share. So branded restaurants will continue to increase market share, and I think are the most dynamic part of the way the restaurant industry is growing. So it doesn't matter if we're talking about Spain or Germany or the UK or Russia, branded concepts will continue to take market share. I think, firstly, my view is you got to build the brand, right? And whether that's building the brand in social media or it's whether you have the right storefront for people, but the brand matters. So you have to figure out how the brand is going to come. And then there's a lot of locations, your Gran Vias here in Madrid or Piccadilly Circus in London, where you sort of have to be to show the brand, and that doesn't get affected by delivery. But if you're in a neighborhood, there's probably a much more efficient way to get food to the customers who want you in an office building than by having another La Tagliatella. He said, where would you like to go to lunch? I said, of course, I'd like to go to La Tagliatella. Is there any other place in Madrid to go than La Tagliatella? So I said, let's just find the closest La Tagliatella. And you see 3 within just a couple of meters walk from here. So I said, that's fantastic. And the brand is super successful here. But it also was built for a dining experience. It wasn't built to bring you La Tagliatella food to your office or your home. And it's why we never did delivery. We have never done delivery because we can't get the food quality to you. So we have to rethink and restructure the way the business works in order to get you the quality of food that you expect from La Tagliatella. We have super thin pizza. We're not going to be able to deliver that pizza to you because it's going to taste different at home. So I think it's really a fundamental question of, as you restructure, you also have to think about your menu. You have to think about the customer experience journey. Are they still going to get the quality of food that you built your brand on? Because if your brand is great and you say, because my brand is great, I can start delivering and they'll accept it. But then the perception has to come down to the actual experience. So I think it's so tempting for so many people just to deliver because their brand is known, and you turn on the switch of Glovo or someone else and they see the name and they buy it. But then it'll come down if you don't elevate the experience to that level. So we have a lot to think about in product and packaging and everything to make sure that the product is great.
But it's really crazy. How many of you have opened one restaurant? How many of you have ever opened one restaurant? Okay. Who has opened 10 restaurants a year? John, you still can raise your hand. Who has opened more than 100 restaurants a year? Who has opened more than 300 restaurants a year? I really think, I really think, John is in the room from Five Guys and he opens 50, 60 a year, I open 30, 40 a year, and it's really crazy. But the organization behind driving this, next year will be one restaurant a day, huh?
No, it'll be more. Next year it'll be 400 to 420 restaurants. Yeah, it's pretty exciting.
Crazy. So let's talk a little bit about M&A. We had that also covered in the intro. There was a lot of things happening in the last 18 months. Coca-Cola shifted from being a pure supplier to the industry to being, at least for you, a competitor. Buying Costa Coffee for 5 billion, Starbucks, the brand where you're one of the biggest partners, sold for 7 billion, the retail business to Nestle. Yap went on shopping tour, bought Panera Bread for 7.5 billion and Pret a Manger for 1.5 billion. You bought Sushi Shop, you bought Bacoa. How you see this whole mergers here in Europe? Is that just the beginning? Was that now a coincidence what happened the last 12 to 18 months? Or how you see, we talk about the Spanish thing later, but how you see this whole action? Because that's huge money, that's huge deals, and also shifting by really a supplier coming into our industry. How you see that?
Yeah, I don't think a supplier is coming into our industry. I think they bought that for what they can do in the retail side of it. I doubt they will stay on the restaurant side of it.
At the moment,
we'll see what they do with it. Yes, but I don't think. But I do think, if you go back to what I said before, brands will continue to take market share, and brands will continue to try, at least, to cross borders. It's very difficult to cross borders, but they will continue to try and cross borders. And the private equity money has been significant. I like what I see in the JAB example, or the Nestle example, because Nestle is focusing on what it's great at, and Starbucks is focused on running the stores and the brand, which they're good at. JAB is not really a private equity. They're trying to operate these for the very long term. So I would like to see more brands become part of groups that have a longer term vision rather than just the private equity 3 to 7 year cycle, depending on what's going on. Because I think the overall industry will benefit more from some consolidation, from some better supply chain structures, especially as we think about the food safety issues associated with having food leave our restaurants, be delivered to multiple scenarios. We have to think about how that's going to work. So I'd like to see more professionalism built up. It's still funny to me that the restaurant industry in Europe is, a hundreds of billions dollar business, and the largest ones are a couple of billion. So, we're in the top 10 in Europe with 2 billion in sales. That really doesn't make sense for something with the scale that you see. So I think we can see more of that going on rather than less. I think we're on a upward
So what's
trend.
on your shopping list?
We never know. We have what we would like, but the thing with acquisitions is you never know the timing. You don't know when a market's going to be ready. I didn't expect to come to Spain in 2011. I didn't expect to be in Germany. Different things happen. So we keep our eyes open, and hopefully we can be a partner of choice for people. We're long term. We want to help the entrepreneurs that start restaurants expand. So I'd like to think we're going to be a partner of choice for people.
Cool. So how you see the biggest deal you did, Sushi Shop? How you see it currently? How excited you are? What you like to do with this brand in your family?
Yeah. Before that, La Tagliatella was our biggest transaction, and that was a great addition. We want to add more proprietary brands. We want to add more brands that we own to get the balance between franchise brands and equity brands a bit more equal. Sushi Shop is special because it's already the European leader in a big category. So it's number one in Europe in that category. It's in 16 countries already. So they've done a lot of the hard work to get across the border, right? Switzerland, Germany, different markets. So, and then they're still small. In Spain, there's only 5 of them. So we think they've done the hardest work of getting across the border, and now it's our opportunity to expand it. But we see in many ways. The concessions business, airports, it seems ideal for. It's clearly great for delivery because of the way the product is. They have a very high quality threshold, so it fits sort of the way we look at brands. So we're going to be expanding it pretty much from the footprint it has, not looking to go into new countries, but work off of the small footprint they have in a lot of markets and grow it.
But when you would now buy a brand, you would always consider, what is our next topic, that it needs to be strong in delivery. You wouldn't buy a non-deliverable product anymore. You would...
I don't know that that's true, but when we were buying the things we bought, Bacoa, Sushi Shop, the Pizza Hut's business, we were looking to build a portfolio of delivery-centric brands, because I do believe that we're going to see more and more of what people are calling dark kitchens or shadow kitchens. And you have to have the right portfolio mix to do a very good job of that. I think being a single operator makes that a bit harder. So we'd like to partner with or own, and we're not going to own all of them that are going to go into shadow kitchens. That doesn't make sense either. But we did need to have a portfolio so that we have, we can speak to the different categories. I think it's hard if you're just a pizza restaurant right now, because now everything can be offered, right? So sushi was important to us because it's one of the leading categories with the high average guest check, and they were the leader, and it's a premium brand, so it was great.
This podcast is brought to you by the Curtis Brothers, creators of artisanal organic ketchup. Guaranteed to tickle the taste buds of foodies, entrepreneurs and teddy bears around the world. Learn more on www.curtisbrothers.com.
Good, thanks. At the beginning of the day, I think you missed it or you came in the middle, Patricia did a summary of her visit to China, what was very much focused and driven by what is going on there in terms of digitalization. They visited Alibaba and she gave a summary, and then also about dark kitchen operate, and I know that you visited them, the Deliveroo editions, etc. And there was this phrase, is the future of our industry dark and digital? Is it dark in terms of dark kitchens and digital? How you see that? Because you were one of the first believers, I remember 4 or 5 years ago, you started thinking about what to do in the industry. You bought into two delivering company, Glovo, and two aggregators, Glovo and in Poland, Pizza Portal. So how you see the whole shift, and what's your prognosis on what we're going to see in the next 3-5 years?
Okay. I really wish I had seen your presentation. You'll have to please share your thoughts with me. Visiting China is incredible. Visiting China just opens your eyes to what's happening in the industry and actually in the world. So if you do have the opportunity, I highly recommend it. 2 years ago in China, our restaurants, we have 50 sort of upper end casual dining restaurants in China. 2 years ago, less than 20% of our business was paid by credit card or digitally. It was almost all cash. Today, we're 4% cash. So we went from 75-80% cash to 4% cash in 2 years. The adoption rates are just phenomenal of digital payment. And because China's infrastructure, digital infrastructure, works a bit differently, their app is an entire ecosystem. So once you're in, you buy, you pay, you live, you travel. Everything is through that single ecosystem. And that makes a lot of sense. We haven't figured that out here. Our banks haven't aligned with Facebook or Instagram or whatever your social media structure isn't linked to your payment, isn't linked to your car, but there it all is. So it's so functional. I think if we could get that omni-esque about the way we approach our daily lives, it would help. It's just so efficient, the way things work. So I don't think we're going to head there too quickly, but the freedom that this thing has given us is incredible, and it has a lot more potential. And I think people are using that freedom in a lot of different ways. You've heard some people in the industry think that the oven is the same thing as the sewing machine. Most of our parents had sewing machines, most of us don't. We have ovens, most of our children won't. It always takes a little longer than the hype, but if you look out and you say, autonomous cars are coming, which means the cost of delivery will come down significantly, which means the cost of food will come down significantly. That trade-off between time and money to cook becomes only for the people who really like to cook. And most of us are not great cooks, right? So if we can get better food, we're going to do that, I think. I just think it's natural that great food is going to become less expensive, I think proportional to our earnings. So I do expect that this is a good time to be in the restaurant business, even though it's disruptive and it's changing and it makes us all nervous. I'm certainly more nervous than I would say I was a couple of years ago because the change is so rapid and you have to really think, how do I stay 1, 2, 3 years ahead in the thinking? And that's getting harder, but it's exciting. It's really exciting.
So the whole delivering piece is the biggest disruption since drive-through in the industry.
But drive-through doesn't make sense to Europeans because there are not enough of them, right?
But it was the last big disruption, I guess. Huh?
Right. I mean, it's definitely the biggest disruption to the European restaurant business ever. You know?
So where are we standing? 15%, 20%, 30%, 50%? How much of our business will be online?
Since I keep getting this wrong, don't believe what I say, because 3 years ago I thought I was, really thinking well when I said AmRest needs to own an aggregator or get into the aggregator space. And I thought maybe this would be 20, 25% of our business. Now I think this is going to be 20 to 40% of our business, and that's a huge gap because I don't know. It probably depends on what the brand is and how you decide that you're going to reach the customer when they want it. It's harder for a drinks business like Starbucks. It's harder for an experience-based brand, but people get attached to brands and they're going to want them when they want them, and so we have to get them there. So I'm certain it's more than 25% now, for sure. And I think people start changing their lifestyle. I mean, with geolocation, I was just in Korea before I went to China. It was amazing that the city had sponsored basically a campground in a park, and they had put up all of these tents in the park, and you could rent the tent for an hour, an afternoon, whatever. And people just came to hang out in the park, and then there was music in the park and everything. And every tent just had a simple little geolocation on it. So when you ordered your food from wherever you wanted to, they just brought it to your tent. So you had like 8,000 people hanging out in this park. There were a few food trucks, but if you didn't want what was in the food truck, you just ordered and the guy brought it to your tent. And I was like, you couldn't have done that 5 years ago, right? It's just a shift in the way we live our life. So yeah, I want a Five Guys burger, but I don't want to get up and leave my tent that I just paid for it. So I just call and Five Guys shows up at my door. I mean, it's pretty awesome.
So what's your learning so far by being part owner or partner with all these big guys? I mean, you invested in Glovo, you invested in Pizza Bottle. It's early days, but is there any learning you can already share, or is there any strategy behind, or you're just trying out, or what's the whole play?
Well, first of all, I guess I'm impressed at the guts. I'll use that word. The willingness for risk of the private equity guys to burn a couple of $100 million or euros. That's pretty impressive how much money they've been willing to invest to get an industry off the ground. So that's the first thing. It's pretty impressive. Secondly, how quickly things are moving and how quickly they are making decisions. With any company that grows, you get a little bit of bureaucracy. I've tried to keep AmRest entrepreneurial. The truth is, what I saw in getting involved with the aggregators is just they're moving faster than we are, and it takes a different thought. And Ding's been great at that because he came with that mindset of, we got to move, we got to make this happen. It's putting a lot of stress on us to try and keep up from a traditional point of view. And it's also made me think about what are the true touch points that as a restaurant brand and providing the quality of food that we're trying to provide, what is it that we need to do versus how can we use them? And that is not clear to me because they're getting into dark kitchens, they're getting into owning the customer data, they're getting into owning the relationship. It's already clear on Glovo that somebody who has Glovo on their phone is probably already more attached to Glovo than they are to the brand they're looking for. And that's very difficult because then you start to lose that. So we have to increase the quality of what we do to be able to respond to that.
So the next part of this journey in the delivery is the dark kitchens. Also there you were one of the first one, or shadow kitchen, whatever we want to call them. You mentioned that. I think there is not clear yet what is happening. We heard today, Patricia said 120 dark kitchens of delivery in London. Are you gonna build dark kitchen? How they will look like? What are you gonna do with them?
We are going to build them. I think that it is the customer wants great food, they want it quickly, and they want it inexpensively. So let's start with the first part, great food. It's hard for me to see how restaurants that were built to serve dine-in customers can produce the same quality of food that's meant for delivery. So you almost have to build a dedicated kitchen just for food quality. When you get into speed, even more so. You have to design the kitchen for speed. You have to not have the interruption of waiters or other things that are on the menu that slow things down. You have to think about your menu. You have to think about it. So they want it timely. You have to design for timeliness. So the first two require shadow kitchen. Then you look at cost. Well, the cost of a location on Gran Via is 18,000 to 25,000 euros a month. So how can I own that rent and get my cost down? There's no way. So you're vulnerable to the guy who, takes the location around the corner and downstairs. So I think also to meet the cost structure, you're going to have shadow kitchen. So I don't see any way it's not a necessity, right? No matter what aspect of the consumer desire we're looking for, you have to have them because they meet all the needs of what's being requested by the customer.
So where will be the first one?
We already have one in Warsaw, and we will probably test almost in every country in Europe where we are next year. And we'll build a lot of them next year.
So next year to share more for your case study. We got 2-3 questions for the Spanish market. So we shift now to the topic of Spain.
Okay.
People wanted to know about Bauer because we talked about all these big mergers just before, and also the other acquisition you did, 240 million, I guess. Sushi Shop was quite sizable, and then you bought a small burger chain with 5 units. So
yes.
The question was, why would you do that? Why are you buying such a local brand, and how you keep this very special local brand within your big family?
Right. Well, the first thing is every one of the brands at AmRest is run by a president of that brand. So we make sure that our brands, we don't mix them up and have the marketing teams mix up or supply whatever goes on the menu or whatever the promotion is or whatever the strategic direction of the brand is developed by a president. So that's important that the Bauer team feels responsible for Bauer. How many people in this room have eaten in Bauer? Okay, and? Fantastic. I like that. Okay, great. That one gave me 2 thumbs up. I love that. There's only one in Madrid. There are 5 in Barcelona. It's a big category. It's a segment that it's huge. The burger category. I think we've seen that there's a lot of room in it. So it was a category that as we looked at shadow kitchens, we felt we needed to be in. It's a brand that has a strong positioning because of its food, and it's very transparent. It's a very authentic brand. All of the plastic that's there is totally recyclable, made out of corn. Just the meats. It's a very millennial brand, let's call it. And so we felt it had potential to grow substantially. We don't want to own any brand that's smaller than 100 million euros of sales. So we wouldn't have bought it unless we saw substantial potential for it.
A lot of openings ahead.
Well, a lot of growth. You asked me whether everything has to be openings or not,
true.
right?
That's
I'm
true.
following the logic of your questions.
That's true. The other question what they wanted to know is how you see this Alsea Grupo VIP Starbucks deal in general. Obviously, probably wanted to have the 2, but
yes.
How you see it now retrospective? What does it mean for Europe, or does it mean anything for Europe? Is it a Spanish thing? How you see that? How important that deal is?
I was amazed when I came to Spain. I'll be very transparent. I thought that the consolidation here should have happened years ago. You had La Tagliatella, Gruppa Vips, and Gruppa Zina. And they sat there as three equals, not cooperating in any way. They didn't cooperate on supply chain. They didn't cooperate in real estate. They didn't cooperate in any way. It made no sense. I can't say I made it. I was very frustrated because I really thought AmRest should have bought Gruppa Zina in 2014. And we didn't get it done. So I think that this consolidation was clearly needed and a good move. Alsea already owned the Vips brand in Mexico, so for them it makes sense. And they've been a big partner for Starbucks in multiple markets, so it made sense for them as well there. So I think it was a natural fit. It was good. And it's more in the line of what I said. I think there's more consolidation. And this was, it's probably good for the Spanish market, and it will probably enhance the brands that they have.
Thank you. So we shift the last couple of minutes before we get for questions to the private blog.
Okay.
You're American.
Be nice.
Yeah, I'm nice. You're obviously American. You live in Europe quite some time. You have a family here. But your older kids still live in the States, and you obviously grew that up. What do you think Europeans can learn from US, and what Americans can learn from here? Because you really lived both culture very, very intense. You did business in both. You have and had families in both. So you really bi-continental, or whatever the word is for that.
Yes.
What can we learn from each other?
Well, the first thing I've learned is as soon as an American talks about Europeans, it's dismissed. So you're not going, there's no way for an American to ever say anything about Europe. The only thing I'll say about Europe is...
You can say nice things.
That's true. The food is fantastic. The people are great, of course. In every country, the people are great. You just have to get to know them, yes? But the biggest issue I have with Europe is there is no union. I mean, I don't get it. Try to take a Spanish electrical company to put in the electrical system into a German restaurant. No way. The Germans won't accept it. You can't get it done. Try to take any trade and bring it into another country in Europe. It just doesn't happen. The amount of regulation in Europe is just mind-boggling. Whether it's labor regulation, control regulations, it's just there's way too much regulation, and it's country by country. It's not a union. So what would I say? I think it could be a better union. That would be my advice. My advice to the States is try not to be so puritanical. I don't know if that will translate. Americans are too closed. They have their view, and they don't see the rest of the world, and the Europeans have a broader view of things like that. So
how you raise your kids, pleasure. American or European?
I have 4 children, and they live in 4 countries. And it's not because I have 4 wives, okay? It's because they've all chosen different things, and they've chosen to, I think, live in the world. When you ask me about America and Europe, I don't really like that question so much because I'm a true believer that we live on one world, and we ought to figure out how to live on one world better. So I think what I've done with my kids is I've shown them that it's one world, and they're out in the world.
Nice. We both visited the Singularity University on separate terms. That's a crazy think tank out of the West Coast. And one professor, I think we had them both, they believe that human beings live quite longer, because we can extend. So you're 50-ish now.
Yes.
So even if we don't believe that, you have a couple of decades in front of you. And you did a speech towards your employees where you said, don't stop running towards your dreams. So a lot of your dreams came through. But what can we expect from you in the next 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years? What dreams you need to still run for?
Well, I would love my life to be as interesting going forward as it has been going past. So that would be my first dream, is to just keep life being as interesting as it has been. But speaking on longevity, I would love to see human life extended so that I could say 150 is going to be easy. So I'd like to think another 100 years ahead.
Okay. And what would you do? What would be the dream in that? Just to
it's
add another 50 years?
No, but life is so interesting. There's so much going on. I heard a funny comment. Somebody was saying, "What are we going to do when all the robots take all of our jobs? What are we going to do?" And the other guy responded, "I've seen 80,000 people sitting in a stadium watching other people kick a ball back and forth and be completely entertained." I don't think humans are difficult to entertain. Okay, it's not that hard. Okay, we got two guys sitting on a chair and almost people are paying attention to us, right? So this is not. They didn't pay for it, right? Okay, but they did with their time, right? So it's not difficult. I think we've got an enormous amount to do. I mean, hell, in 100 years, we might be sitting on Mars having this conversation, right? So there we go. So, it
Why
could
not?
be fascinating.
Thank you so far.
Stay tuned on www.teddytalkswith.com.